Okay, compression. Here we go. So we're going to have a look at compressors and compression. And compressors are classed as a dynamic effect, okay, or a dynamic plugin, or whatever you want to say. So dynamic meaning that it's relating to volume, so dynamics or volume in music. So compressors are a dynamic effect, and these are some of the really common parameters you will find inside of a compressor. So threshold, ratio, gain, attack, release, and knee. And I'm not going to get too crazy what all these mean just yet. I'm going to give you a brief overview of compressors and just let you use some. And I'm going to give you a quick explanation as to what they're actually doing. Because compressors are one of these things that lots of people just misunderstand and aren't quite sure what they're doing, and just sort of guess with to how they work. So I want to show you with some incredible drone skills, hopefully. There we go. I want to just show you what a compressor is actually doing. So this is a bit of audio that I've recorded. This is the waveform of some audio that I've recorded. Okay, and you can see it's made up of some really big peaks in the audio. So at the start of a sound, you get this really big peak at the beginning of a sound, and then you see it starts to die off, and then it sort of sustains for a little bit, and then it dies, it decays at the end. So my waveforms are made up of these big peaks and then these sort of decays and then sustains and then nothing essentially. Okay, so you can see that they're made up of these different volumes. And that can be a little bit problematic when we're getting into mixing and getting into, making everything sit nicely in a mix. Because we don't often want all the instruments to have that much dynamics to it. So if you imagine that I've got, let's say, a couple of guitars and a vocalist, okay, I might want to get my guitars sort of buried in the background a little bit, and then have my vocalist sitting right at the front of the mix, being the thing that I'm listening to the most. And I might want to hear all these sort of dynamic changes in the vocals from when they're singing really loud, or if there's like an intimate part of the song, they might be singing quite quietly. And I just want my guitars to be accompanying in the background, and I don't want to hear all these big dynamic changes or quite as many dynamic changes. So what a compressor does is, I'm going to show you some of my incredible drawing skills here. Let's see what straight line I can draw. So if I put a compressor on, I'm sorry, this isn't very straight. I'm trying my best. So if I put a compressor on, what happens is it chops the waveform, kind of squashes or compresses the waveform into a smaller area. So imagine the ceiling was sort of up here and the floor down here, and it's sort of squashed it and it's chopped off those big peaks. And what we're left with is what's inside this area here. Okay, and like, what use is that to us? Why have we done that? Well, if we think about what's happened is, we've made these bits, we've chopped off these really big peaks, and now this here, these are our loudest parts. Okay, and if this is the floor and the ceiling, these small parts here, the quieter parts, become louder as well. So there's less dynamic changes. So originally we had the quietest bits of the wave would be here, and the loudest ones would be up here. Where now we have, these are still our quietest bits, but now the loudest parts of the song, the loudest parts of the waveform, are there. Okay, so it makes the quieter parts louder and makes the louder parts quieter. So it sort of compresses and balances the overall volume. That's what our compressor is doing. And I think I had a little example hiding in here as well. There you go. So you can see this is quite a nice little example of just what a compressor is doing. I wonder if I can get rid of him. Just excuse my scribbles on the screen. But yeah, we can see that that's the uncompressed waveform there. And when it's compressed, that's what it's going to end up looking like. Okay, so that's compression in a nutshell for you. That's what it's doing. Okay, so very quickly, before we dive into actually putting the compressor on and you hearing it, we're just going to have a little look at some of these descriptions and we'll look through them together. So the first one, threshold. Threshold, it says, use this setting to select when the compressor will start working on the audio signal. So this will usually be measured in decibels or dB, okay? And if your threshold's set to the wrong level and your audio signal's not loud enough to trigger the compressor working, often some people will mess around with all the rest of these things: ratio, gain, attack, release, and knee, but the threshold's not set to actually activate the compressor. So what this means is, when do we want the compressor to start working on the audio signal? And we'll have a look at that in some more detail. Ratio, you'll see this, there's some examples down here, but basically the higher the number of the ratio, the harder it's going to compress, so the harder it's going to squish the signal. Gain, so it says add makeup gain to adjust for any reduction in level due to the compressor function. So you can add or you can remove volume for the overall level of whatever it is you've compressed. Attack, so it says use the setting to tell the compressor how soon to impact the signal after it crosses the threshold. So once it reaches past a certain volume level, how quickly do we want it to act? And release, being the opposite, use this setting to tell the compressor how long to hold the effect until it's uncompressed. Okay, so do we want to hold it for a long time, or do we want to compress it really quickly and then let it go back to where it normally was? And then knee, this setting applies to the gain reduction. So if it's quick, a reduction quick, hard knee, or gradually soft knee. So that's the basics of compression, okay? And in the next short video, I'm going to show you some compression actually working within your DAW.